Living in Seattle versus living in Hawaii. Pros and cons. Welcome in, fam. Much love, Trav here. So I grew up in Seattle and lived in Seattle for about 23 years. I spent about 3 years living in Humboldt, California, and I spent a year living in Europe. I've spent about 2.5 years living in Hawaii now. And maybe you saw my video, pros and cons of living in Seattle. Maybe you saw my video, pros and cons of living in Hawaii. So let me talk about, should you live in Seattle or Hawaii? And it's an interesting thing because I see a lot of people move from Seattle, Pacific Northwest, to Hawaii. And then I see a lot of people move from Hawaii to the Pacific Northwest. So why move between one or the other? So yeah, welcome in, fam. Why don't I start with the weather? The weather in Hawaii is amazing. Hawaii, let me take you over here. Hawaii is a really, what's up, sheep? Welcome in, sheep. Much love, sheep here. Hawaii is an incredibly beautiful place, and this is why people want to be here, is because the weather is so good. And it gets hot, but it doesn't get that hot. And it rains, but oh well. And it's just a nice temperature, especially in the winter time. Whereas Seattle, is nice in the summertime, but it only has 100 days of sun, and 265 days you don't see the sun. So Hawaii wins weather one by a lot. So 1 point Hawaii, 0 point Seattle. Seattle's gonna win some though. Another thing that comes with the weather, I believe, is the culture. People are a lot friendlier in Hawaii. They call it the Aloha State. People are very friendly. People are in good moods generally, and I think that has everything to do with the weather. Whereas in Seattle, people call it the Seattle freeze. People are really grumpy and crotchety and mad, and they call it the Seattle freeze. And yes, there's friendly people in Seattle. There's a lot of nice people in Seattle, but you haven't seen the sun in like 3 months. How good a mood can you be? So people are just kind of grumpy for that reason. So Hawaii wins on the culture and the mood, 2-0. Now what else should you know? Okay, both places are really expensive. Both places are ranked to be twice as expensive as the average US median. Although Seattle is 4 times as expensive, the housing. So housing in Seattle is even twice of what is in Hawaii. Hawaii is twice as expensive. Seattle's 4 times expensive. Overall, they're about the same in price because Hawaii's food is more expensive. Hawaii's medical insurance is a little lower. On average, they're both really expensive. So it's a tie on that one. However, the big difference here is where in both places are really expensive, Seattle has a lot of high-paying jobs because you have Amazon headquarters right there, you have Facebook office, you have Google office, you have Microsoft right outside, you have a lot of big size companies like Wizards of the Coast or real estate or all these technology. And it's not, it's gonna be hard, but not that hard because there's plenty of 6-figure jobs where you can actually afford to pay 4 times the national average. You can afford to pay twice the average because you're making twice the average. Hawaii is not like that. Hawaii doesn't have all these tech jobs. It doesn't have all these high-figure jobs. It has, it's low paying. On average, it doesn't pay well. You do have some high-paying jobs in terms of, we still have some doctors. We still have some civil engineers, and we have stuff like that. However, Barney wants to say what's up. However, on average, there's not very good high-paying jobs. Hawaii doesn't pay well, so what ends up happening is people live in poverty. They live on state help, and or they work like twice as many hours. Everybody's got 2 jobs. They're hustling. People drive Uber. They drive Lyft after the regular jobs. So 1 point for 2 points Hawaii, 1 point Seattle. Seattle's got, it's easier to have a good standard of living because of the jobs. Here, another thing, hikes. Man, look at these sheep. These sheep are having fun. Hawaii has some really nice hikes. The ocean's right here. You climb these mountain ridges and you look down. Although Seattle has, outside of Seattle, there's Mount Rainier, Snoqualmie, all these areas. And that's another thing. As far as price goes, why would people move from Hawaii to Seattle for price? Is it just for jobs? Well, actually, whereas Seattle is really expensive and Hawaii is really expensive, Seattle, you can move outside of the city and have one of these high-paying jobs in the city, and you just have to deal with the horrible traffic. the prices drop off quite a bit, whereas Hawaii is just kind of an island, and it's expensive on the islands period. You can move to an outer island, but you're not really commuting from the big island to Honolulu. That's not a real thing, so for the most part. So economically, Seattle wins on that. Yeah, hikes, both are amazing for outdoors. I prefer Hawaii because you can swim in the ocean year round without needing a cold wetsuit and stuff like that. Seattle, you can't do that. Let's see, pros and cons living in Seattle. Well, Hawaii is way more Asian. If you're an Asian person, you're gonna have a better time because of the Polynesian influence, and also because the Chinese, Japanese have been here. So it's a good place to be Asian or be mixed race. Whereas Seattle, yeah, there's some diversity. It's pretty white. How about food? I think so. For food, like I said, both are expensive. It's even more expensive in Hawaii because we're on a little island that's the furthest away from any other major city, Honolulu. So it takes a long time to ship food out here, and we only grow 5% of our food. I'm trying to help grow this food, by the way. Whereas Seattle, you're still not growing most of the food, but at least it's coming from California, which is closer. So it's less expensive, and so it's easier access. And also part of that is Seattle has a greater immigrant culture, even though Hawaii is like pretty mixed. Seattle has a lot of different immigrants from, it's sort of a haven city. You got people coming from Africa, from Asia, from South America, from Eastern Europe, and then all the regular places you'd expect. So you can get cuisine from all over the world. Hawaii, not quite as much. I mean, I'd love if there was more taco buses. I'd love if there was more. It's not that the food in Hawaii isn't good. Like living on the farm, you get the tropical fruit, you get the papayas, you get the mangoes, you get the fresh avocados, you get all the stuff you wouldn't even know about, soursop, a dragon. I said dragon, but yeah. So that's maybe a tie even. It's more expensive, but you get the tropical stuff. In Seattle, you get around the world cuisine. So that's close. Let's see what else we can match up on. Oh, how about ease of traveling from, like, Seattle? SeaTac's not bad. It's not expensive to get down to across the US, whereas Hawaii, you're a little bit closer to Asia, but you're pretty remote. It's really expensive to get anywhere. So I guess Seattle gets a point for that. Seattle gets a point for that over Hawaii. Seattle is easier to travel around from as a base of operations. Agriculture, if you're into farming, I'm into farming. Hawaii wins that because, well, probably you get cheaper land outside of Seattle, but on Hawaii, you have a year-round growing season and you can grow a lot more different things, and you have the tropical stuff. So I would give it to Hawaii for agriculture. So we have what, 3 points for Hawaii, 2 points for Seattle. Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, is in everybody's dream life, they're not moving from Hawaii to Seattle, they're living in Hawaii. But not everybody gets their dream life, because in your dream life, you're probably not making $30,000 a year when the standard of living is like $100,000, and you're just struggling to get by, and you're saving nothing, and you're eating cheap food, and then you're like, you know, maybe I should move to the Pacific Northwest, get a cheap place out of the city, and get a high-paying job in the city, and raise my standard of living. And yeah, the traffic's going to be bad, people are going to be unhappy, and the weather's going to suck, but at least I'm not going to be so stressed about money all the time, because there'll be opportunity. So that's why that happens. And then, yeah, the people moving from Seattle here, either they have a dream or they made it. So yeah, in my case, it was both. Like, not that I like made it, but I make money online. So I'm not a super wealthy person, but it's enough that I'm not too worried about the cost of living here with my current job. So let me know what you think about that. I appreciate you, and share your experience down below, your experience living in Seattle versus living in Hawaii. We would all love to hear it. There's probably some stuff I forgot to mention, and it would be great if you could fill in the gaps. So I'm gonna go to this event right now. I just want to say thank you, appreciate you, and have a wonderful time. And let me know in the comments. And if you want me to just talk about Seattle or just talk about Hawaii, I have some other videos on that too. I wanted to film this one from the beach, but this works. Do it from the farm. The mountains are pretty. Peace out, much love. Talk to you soon. Look forward to hearing what you have to say. Fam.